think back over the last few years of your life and think about a great trip that you've been on, that you really enjoyed. So I thought about this question. A couple came to mind pretty quickly. I immediately thought back to when Kelly and I were newly married and we were young parents, living in Lubbock and making long trips to Kerrville with the kids in the car seats, and I can't remember if we had a child on this trip. I think we did, which is really sad if we did, but we'd be driving. We'd try to leave at night because the kids would sleep, and it would be easier to travel with children at night when they're sleeping. But I remember we were either going to Kerrville or home from Kerrville. Who knows? I probably have the details wrong, but I do remember us pulling up in front of like a 7-Eleven early in the morning, 1 or 2 a.m., where the lights were shining around, and shutting the car off and going to sleep. I mean, we just were that tired. Was Aspen a baby? It seemed like we had a little baby then, which is just completely insane. You just don't do that. You don't pull over at a 7-Eleven and take a nap at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's not the place. Get off the checkbook, Randy, get a hotel, go spend the night, but we were just going to get a couple hours of sleep and go on. Then I thought about, back in 2000, can't believe it's been 16 years, but Lord have mercy. Larry Couch, Kevin Killingsworth, Ned Nichols, and I got in a van, and we drove from here to Texas and from Texas to Colorado for a fishing trip. You can learn a lot about your brethren when you're spending 17 hours at one time in the...
That's right.
We definitely, we make a trip again, we're definitely stopping by Walgreens and we're getting a few items out the door before we go, because, boy, air freshener would be one of them. Hopefully we get some pills to stop it before you even need air freshener. But anyway, you learn a lot about your brethren when you make that trip. But no, in all seriousness, one of the great things was we prayed that we want to have a good time, obviously. We want to go fishing in Colorado. But we prayed that God would use us. And with God as our witness, we didn't even get to Winfield, Alabama.
That's right.
And we had to pull over and help somebody. When we got the first day of fishing, really, we were in Colorado. We prayed that morning, God, we just want to have a successful day, meaning we want to be used for your glory, but if you can throw some creels of fish in, that'd work too. And we got out on the interstate, and there was a car pulled over, and two women, I think they had a flat, they had some kind of car problem, and one of the ladies was in a wheelchair. So I think back on all of these different trips, road trips that I've made, and you could probably think of some that stand out in your memory, either recent or in the past. But I'll tell you one trip that just about everybody of any age has ever made, and some of us have made it a lot of times, and that is the good old-fashioned guilt trip. I love this thing that I found. Thank you for letting me know my virus definitions are updated. Appreciate that. I broke this thing down. I want to check it out. It's so cool. This is used so much by some that you'll notice over there on the right, they even got a spot you can just check it off. You don't have to even write your name now. Just to whoever, check off your mom. All right? And look at this, is great. It has been, and you get to check it off, it's been days, it's been weeks, it's been months, it's been forever. There's your superlative. How about this? You never, just check it off. You never call, you never write, you never visit, you don't clean up, arrive on time, show support, hang out, recycle. That's a good one. That's a green American one right there. Give me a ride, apologize, pick up the tab, listen, or flatter me. So I guess I'll just sigh, pout, stare out the window, talk to myself, wait patiently, do it for you, stick my head in the oven. That's my favorite. Eat some worms. What was that old little kid song? Everybody hates me, I'm going to go eat worms. That's where it came from. I knew there was a song for it. Drink the whole bottle alone. Sulk and sob. And after all I have done for you. That is the good old ticket for a guilt trip. Surely that doesn't apply to any of us. I was doing pretty well until I saw that you never clean up. And I thought, ooh, I throw that ticket around once in a while. What do you suppose is the offspring of guilt? One clear offspring of guilt is fear. Fear of getting caught, fear of being rejected if you get found out, fear of retaliation if you've done something really wrong, fear of God's judgment. There are a lot of people who call themselves believers, a lot of people who call themselves children of God, saved, Christian, that are carrying around a lot of guilt. A lot. What do you do with guilt? Maybe before I ask what do you do with guilt, I need to ask what is guilt, really? Well, it's that emotion you experience when you do wrong, even though you know better. Or you caused hurt or harm or injury to somebody. You disappointed or upset someone. You sinned. See, when I say you sinned, or if I say I sinned, it basically covers all three of those. Because the definition of sin biblically is not just to disobey God, or certainly that is. The definition of sin biblically is to miss the mark. So if you're an archer, if you're a hunter, you've got a gun with a scope that's sighted in, and you shoot at something and you miss the mark, that's the concept behind sin, because God says, this is your life. This is the way I've designed you. I've designed you with purpose. We've looked at that already. Living your life by God's design. And when we violate that design, that is sin. And yes, it disappoints me when I do it, but it certainly disappoints God. And every time that anyone in the world sins, it points back to what God had to do to take care of sin in the first place. And that is execute his own son. Now, I don't know about you, but that's enough to make anybody feel guilty. If you really think about the fact that all of my sin and all of your sin and all the sins of the world were heaped on one man so they could be paid for once and for all. And that is the recipe for guilt. My sin caused the death of someone's son. I got to tell you, we don't, most of us, unless we know what to do, we really don't do very well with guilt. What do we do with it? Just think about it. What do you do when you experience guilt? What do you do with it? One of the first things you see people do is they ignore it, or they downplay it, or they bury it. Are you going, well, we should bury guilt. No. You don't bury guilt. You have to deal with it. What you bury, what you let God bury, is the sin that causes the guilt. If you just try to ignore it, if you downplay, if you act like it's not there, just set to the side, it will come back to haunt you. A lot of people like to blame others. That's the American way of life. It's always somebody else's fault. Isn't it wonderful to live in a society of victims? I mean, it's amazing to me over the last, just in my lifetime, to see the numbers of defenses in courts of law for things that when many of you who are older, you would have never, you've been laughed out of court if you made some kind of defense like, it's always somebody else's fault. It's a chemical thing. Your mama didn't breastfeed you long enough. There's all these things that people will look to say, instead of saying, look, maybe some things should have been different in my upbringing. Maybe I should have had better teachers. Maybe my parents could have done a better job. Maybe I could have hung out with people that weren't such bad influences on me. But at the end of the day, you have to say, I chose to do this. Am I going to accept responsibility? And it's much easier to blame everybody else. But some of us are experts in this last one. I got a PhD in beating myself up. That's actually the easiest way. That way you take everybody else out of the equation. You deal with it, but when you beat yourself up, you keep dealing with it. You just keep bringing it back afresh. I mean, is that any kind of way to live? Because if you do live that way with that kind of guilt, it absolutely will not go away. You're going to be dealing with it from now on. Right. Surely you know someone in your sphere of family or friends that something happened, maybe they did or was done to them, probably they did, years and years and years and years ago, and if they ever open their mouth and start talking about it, it's like it happened yesterday. How can that be? Because they're keeping it alive. They're carrying their guilt around almost like a badge. So when I read this passage of Jesus going up to the cross, most of the world knows that Jesus Christ, this person in history, died on a cross. I mean, most people get that. They may not believe it, but they know that element of a story. It's a piece of history or whatever. But fewer people know, if you took a worldwide poll, lots of people know, the greatest percentage would know he died on the cross. A fewer amount of people from that number will tell you that he paid for the sins of the world, but I'll guarantee you couldn't string up 0.1% of the people who could tell you what the benefits of that death provided. I'm going through this right now. I do a lot of training, you already know that. And I don't know how much you know about tires, but tires is right, Michael, it's a wonderland of stuff. I mean, so we have to talk, we train our guys up to talk about things like siping, right? Chris Horsley, siping. If I came to you as a tire salesperson And I go to Debbie and I say, Debbie, let's talk about your tires. Let's talk about siping. You're going to go, okay. What is that? Well, that's the way the tread is designed so they can push water away. Either out the sides or out the back, or preferably both. Maybe Debbie would be thinking, then why don't you just say it's a tire that handles well in wet weather traction? That I can understand. Siping, I don't get that. Here's a really good one. Circumferential grooves. I can't even spell it. Yeah. Circumferential grooves. See, all these things I'm talking about are what we call features. The siping is this, the circumferential grooves, and Michelin's supposed to be the best in the world. They are the best in the world as far as tires because of their mixture of silicone and rubber, and they got all this. Customers are going to go, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean a thing to me. What they want to know is, how much does it cost? How long is it going to last? How's it going to ride? Is it soft? Does it ride like you're riding in a wagon? How's it going to ride? So that's the difference between feature and benefit. A lot of people can tell you Jesus died on the cross. And they might be able to even tell you Jesus died for the sins of the world. What very few people will be able to tell you is, what are the benefits of that? See, if you say to somebody, Jesus Christ loves you, the Son of God, the same things that Carrie Job sings, and by the way, she doesn't sing any better than Sharna. That's the absolute truth. But when you hear that, you just go, man, it's so powerful. Well, why is that so powerful? Because the lyricist, whether it was Carrie Job or that guy she writes with all the time, whoever wrote that song, they put it in terms that tell you what the benefit is. They don't go into I could stand up here and talk about the forensics of crucifixion, and it would gross you out. And in fact, it would probably make you cringe. And if you don't understand the forensics, just watch The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson. Watch the crucifixion scene. Watch the beating scene. And I'll tell you what, that is a guilt creator. Because when I watch that, the whole time in my mind, I'm going, he did that for me. And I could explain that to everybody and talk about the excruciating method of death called execution by crucifixion, and talk about the way that eventually what happens is the person asphyxiates. They drown in their own fluid. And that may freak people out and may make them go, oh, that makes my stomach hurt. Oh, I feel so sorry. But if I don't talk about the benefits, I have not done my job. I've not done my job. So if I ask you, what are 7 benefits? It's just name 7. Probably most of you, probably in this room, we'd probably get 5 out of 7 pretty easily. Maybe. But if you just ask people in the world, just ask people you work with that don't call themselves religious. By the way, I'm not religious. I don't like religion. Religion hurts people. I like relationships in Jesus. That's much better. But if you talk to people who are not religious, they're not churchgoers, and you maybe get in a religious discussion, spiritual discussion, and you say, what would you say the benefits were or are of this person, Jesus, dying for your sins? Probably the first thing they would say is forgiveness, and we would go, absolutely, amen, right on, next. They might be hung up there. Heaven? Yeah, that's still tied to forgiveness, but that's okay. We'll give you 2 for that. Are you with me? If we can't confidently know in our hearts and speak with our tongues what the benefits of the cross are, do we fully understand what it is the cross did for us? What he did on the cross for us? If you're reading the story, what we're going to look at here are love's greatest 7, and that just simply means the greatest words of love that came out of Jesus' mouth when he was dying for the sins of the world, yours, mine, and everyone else. And as there's 4 different accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they all don't contain the same ones. In fact, you have to read all 4 to get all 7, because no one account tells us all 7 things he said, which is pretty amazing. But if you read the Luke passage, as Jesus is going to his execution, it almost sounds like he's whipping out the guilt trip ticket and filling it out. I'm going to show you how. A large number of people followed Jesus, including women who mourned and waited for him. Jesus turned to them and he said, daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. For they will say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it's dry? In other words, the tree is green, and when it's in the dry analogy there, Jesus saying, the Son of God is finally here. What you people have been waiting for forever is finally happened. The tree is green. It is flourishing. And if people do it when I'm here now, what's going to happen later on when it dries up? I'm telling you, that sounds like a big old ticket to the guilt trip to me. So I filled it out this way. To the Jewish people, from Jesus, the Son of God, you never, I get to use the fill in the blank one. I always like the fill in the blank when they don't have my answer on there. By the way, I used to fill out all this kind of stuff. They never have minister listed as a vocation when they pick vocation. Isn't that weird? So I'd always click other. So it kind of makes you the weirdo. It's like, are there so few ministers in the world now that you can't even put that on an application? But look, you never believe me, so I'll just not eat worms. I guess I'll just have to die for you. That's what it sounds like if you just read it on the surface. Jesus going to his death turns to the women and says, you don't need to weep for me. You need to weep for yourselves. You need to be thinking about, you better be hoping that women don't have babies and aren't nursing babies, because they're going to be coming into a world that rejected the very salvation they'd always prayed for. Here's how I know that Jesus isn't handing out the ultimate ticket to the biggest guilt trip on the face of the earth. Here's how I know. Because if you read the next passage, Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. What I didn't read today is all the other passages wrapped around that one that says that the two thieves that were crucified with him were mocking him. That the people on the ground, the soldiers, the other Jewish people, were mocking him. They were saying things like, you saved others, save yourself. And they're just heaping insult after insult after insult after insult. If there was ever an opportunity for Jesus to send people on a guilt trip, it would have been now. Instead, that other passage now makes more sense. That other passage makes much more sense. He's simply saying to them, don't weep for me. What's happening here is for a purpose. And as far as we can tell from the study of Scripture, this is the very first thing that Jesus said from the cross. The very first thing he said is the predominant reason he went there in the first place. Forgive them. Now, if you want to keep reading, what you find out is that one of the thieves had a change of heart. Both are hurling insults. It's clear. Both are hurling insults. But either because the one thief saw how Jesus reacted, or he just had a change of heart, because I guess being on a cross has a way of shifting your paradigm. And he simply prayed the weakest prayer you'll ever hear in the Bible. Remember me. Not forgive me. Not, I'm so sorry, does God have a place for me? 2 words. Remember me. And what does Jesus say? Today you'll be with me. Verily, verily. I'm going to go King James. Truly, truly I say to you, today you'll be with me in paradise. First thing he says from the cross is the greatest set of words that could ever come out of his mouth as far as what we live every day. I don't know about you, but I'm thankful that God opened my eyes and I got out of that God loves me. It's like picking the old days when they pick a flower, he loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me, and you're pulling petals, and you hope you end with one that says, he loves me. There was always a way to cheat around that. If it was, he loves me not, then you just take the whole flower and go, he loves me, and you throw that away. I don't know about you, but I can't even imagine living the eeny, meeny, miny, mo way of spiritual life anymore. And I think Jesus, knowing that, knew that the first and most important thing that he would ever say. Now listen, if you're leaving the world, and you know you're leaving the world, what are you going to say to people? What are you going to say to your family? If they're gathered around your deathbed, if you know the end is drawing near, what would you say? Would you make sure that all the bills were taken care of? What would you say if you knew they were going to be your last words? The first of the last things Jesus said is forgive. So here's what I want you, this is what we're going to do for the next 7 weeks. We're going to look at love's greatest statements. The 7 statements from the cross. Forgiveness. Okay? Forgiveness, though, if you just talk to people in general, it might kind of be like siping in circumferential grooves. What does that really mean? What does it really mean for me to be forgiven? So I like to put things as simply as I can, as my small brain needs it in a package that I can walk out of here with. And it's the title of today's lesson. It allows me to skip the guilt trip. When I understand that Jesus has truly forgiven me, and there's some things I got to do to really bring it home. Something I've got to do to ingest it. Something I have to do to get it inside. First thing I have to do is admit it. That is, confess your sins one to another, and you will be healed. That's what it means. You don't ignore it. You don't bury it. You admit it. For heaven's sake, young people, millennials, please pay attention to me. As someone who works in the field of vocations outside of church, please own up to your mistakes. Your bosses will respect you 10 times more than if you deny it. If you come to an interview and we ask you a question, so do you have any felonies in your background? Just say, yes, sir, I did. Back in so-and-so, this happened, but I've straightened up. That does not hinder us from hiring you. But here's what will hinder us. No, I don't have any. And we do a background check. And you've got 3. We have an integrity issue there. I'm here to tell you. Or this. Well, yeah, I do, but, and then you start blaming everybody else. It is time for people. It is time for men in America to stand up and accept responsibility. Yeah. If you've not been a good father, accept it, admit it, and now change. If you've not been a good husband, accept it, admit it, and now change. Don't deny it. Don't walk away from it. Because you'll never deal with the guilt until you do. You may or may not believe in the AA process, but I'll guarantee you, their first step is golden as far as God's concerned. What's the first step in AA? Admit you got a problem. Because if you don't do that one, the other 11, is that right? 12 steps? Yeah. Other 11 are worthless. You admit it. You take responsibility. And here's the hard part for a lot of people. To ask for forgiveness means you have to humble yourself under God. You don't ask for forgiveness and say, well, God, I really need you to forgive me. But I also want you to know that, as though he doesn't already know what you're about to tell him. The Spirit of God dwells in a humble and contrite heart. You know what contrite means? It means you shrivel up that thing called pride and you stuff it down until it becomes nothing. That's what contrite means. It means there is a God and I'm not him. Amen. That's what contrite means. And my friend John Gordon has taught me this for 19 years. and you got to let it go. I take it back what I said a while ago. That's the hardest one. Let it go is the hardest one. I said this last week. When Jesus buries all my sins, one passage in the Bible says, at the bottom of the sea, but when Jesus buries my sins, deep, deep, deep down in the earth, don't leave the shovel by the back door. Some people, like me, tend to flourish with self-deprecation. You know, I like to beat myself up because it gives me some sort of sick satisfaction that I am paying for my sins. I'll never forget the vision. I still have it, the picture, not the vision, the picture in my mind of when we went to Mexico City in 1994. Mexico City. And we went to the Basilica. And there's I don't know how many of you have been to Mexico City, been to the Basilica, but there's in one spot, I don't know where it is on the square, but there's a spot where there's a pathway that winds itself up, and you actually walk up onto this almost like an above ground kind of platform thing, and there's the Basilica. And it's just amazing architecture. I don't even know how old it is. It's unbelievable. But in the middle of that walkway, you've got this path, but on the inside of the path, there are all these different size. It almost looks like lava rock with sharp, jagged edges. And mostly women, I didn't see a lot of men, but mostly women have their house dresses pulled up, and they are crawling on their knees on that jagged rock to get up to the Basilica. They are paying penance for their sins. Now when I saw that at, how old was I then, Kelly? 28 years old, whatever I was. Looking at that, I thought, that's insanity. Really? Now that I'm a little older and hopefully a little wiser and not quite so impetuous and dumb as to look down on something like that and think, well, gosh, I'm above that. Oh, really? I may not get down on my bare knees and crawl around and tear the skin up on my knees to pay penance for my sins, but I sure can talk a good game when it comes to penance for my sins. You know what that is? You know what that is? That is a really sad, watered down version of sadism. Just, we like to inflict. You know, they said Martin Luther would take his shirt off. I don't know if it's true, I've read it. They said he would take his shirt off down in the basement of the castle in Germany, where he was hiding out after he got kicked out of the Catholic Church, and he would take a cat o' nine tails, flagellate himself, whip himself. Even you see the Da Vinci Code movie, whatever, you know, the kind of albino guy that, that's where it comes from. That's beating yourself up for your sins. Let me tell you something. God beat up Jesus for your sins.
That's right.
And for my sins. They're paid. The price that sin put on the books has been paid. But we're going to save that one.
Thank you.
So as we close here, think about what it means to tie the forgiveness that you and I say we have to the guilt that we're carrying in. Because I'm here to tell you, Jesus wasn't one-upping Moses. Moses was the ultimate guilt trip giver. You got 10 reasons to go on a guilt trip. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. You shall not build any idols. I mean, there's 10 reasons, and then there's 614, 621, 600 something laws that they always broke. One more chance to go on a guilt trip. Jesus didn't come along a couple thousand years later, 1,500 years later, and go, you know what, I'm going to up Moses. Let me give you a new way to feel bad about yourself. Moses said, don't commit adultery. I'm telling you, don't even think about it. Moses said, don't murder. I'm going to tell you, don't even be angry with your brother. You've heard that it was said, your vow on this, and swear on the temple, swear on the gold of the temple. I'm telling you, let your yes be yes, and your no be no. It's like, if we don't think about it in the right way, we're thinking, all Jesus did was come and give us new ways to feel crummy about ourselves. That's not what he did. John says, the law came through Moses, but grace and truth through Jesus. And in that truth, it says, you don't have to carry what I've paid for.
Amen.
You don't have to pay for, you don't have to carry that anymore. Admit it. Take responsibility. Ask for forgiveness. And then, you know why I said let it go every day? Because if I said let it go, all of us would walk out of here going, well, I'm failing at that one. Because it's not like you let a balloon go and it flies up into the atmosphere till it gets so cold or the pressure gets so high it pops and falls back to the earth. Let it go means you got to get up every day and let it go. You got to get up every day and say, God, I've been carrying this, but I'm not going to carry it anymore. You got to take it. Amen. And guess what you do the next day? You do the same thing. And you do the same thing until, because you'll never forget it, but it can fade into memory to where it doesn't dictate what you do today.
Amen.
That's how you get rid of guilt. I'm skipping the guilt trip. I'm thankful to have a mother and a grandmother that never really put me on a guilt trip, but I've seen guilt trips given out in families, and Lord have mercy, those are some trips you don't ever want to go on. Here's what you need to leave with. No matter who's trying to put you on a guilt trip. And I got to be careful. I'm just going to fess up. This is all about transparency. Sometimes I do this with my kids. Sometimes I do this with my son. I'm extremely hard on my son. I've lightened up some, but I'm trying to grow him up into a man. But the way you grow him up into a man is not guilt tripping, and sometimes I do. So I'm just confessing it. And I got a witness. I got 2 witnesses. That guilt is not a great motivator. It is a motivator, but it's not a good one. You don't like it, neither do I. So, whatever you might be thinking about what you have done that you can't turn loose of, or maybe what you say to somebody that you love to get them to do something. Let's all, you know what, let's make a committee, let's make a group decision. We're going to leave it right here today. Can we do that? Grab a hand, let's leave it here today. God, and as we leave here today, God, I want everyone to hear me say that the only way, the greatest decision in life that we will ever make, bar none, is the decision we make today about you. The decision we make about what Jesus has done for us. So God, I'm preaching and praying at the same time, but I just want everyone to know that your desire is that everyone be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. You said that. I pray that that begins today for some who have not done it. And God, we also know, both because of Jesus' example and because of all the examples we see of people coming to faith, that you want them to tie their faith, our faith, to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ through baptism, be buried in water, raised to walk in newness of life. And anyone here today who needs to do that, God, we just want them to know that this Crossview family believes in that wedding ceremony for all who choose to believe Christ. But God, what we're going to do today, we're making a vow today, and Kelly's going to hold me accountable. She's got a lot of work to do. And we're going to hold each other accountable, and we're going to motivate through love. And we're going to leave all those guilt-mongering techniques. We're going to take that big old ticket book like policemen have, where we get to write tickets to the guilt trip, and we're going to leave it right here today. Because you said, first, from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. But I got to tell you, God, that might have been the case for those Jews who handed Jesus up. They didn't see your plan. I get it, but I got to tell you, Lord, it really means more to me to have Jesus say to me, Father, forgive Randy, even though he knew exactly what he was doing. That means much more. Because I do know that. And when I fail with eyes wide open. So for that plan that you put into place, that no one, not the Romans, not your people, even angels long to look into that plan that you put into place that executed your Son for the sins of the world so that he could then provide forgiveness, we thank you. We thank you that we stand in grace. We thank you that we stand in love. And all God's people who will agree will say in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for being online this morning. Did we pick up anybody else? Come on. So, Natalie, Facebook me and let me know the date of that surgery, where it's going to be. And we're going to continue to pray for you. So thank you for being online. BJ, we'll see you in a little bit. And Amanda, glad that you were online today. Thank you all for joining us along Crossview Connect. Debbie, go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to apologize because I let something